in terms of this next case study, it actually comes from an industry that is fairly new to us. So we do a lot in the financial services space and travel, obviously. This is from the motor vehicle space, but it's actually a somewhat familiar problem, which is, in the simplest term, needing to collect data from 5, 10, 100, 1,000 different people, collate it all together, put into some common form, and then do some work with it after that. We were actually introduced to it from somebody who had used Solvexia in the past and was doing some consulting work at this particular group and introduced us to the problem, so that was great. But it's really all around the administration of extended warranties. And I think anybody who's shopped for a car is sort of well aware of this let's say, marketing tactic where they offer you a 3-year extended warranty. Now some of the dealers are offering 5-year extended warranties, and it's fantastic for the dealer because it gives them an opportunity to sell more cars. A lot of these extended warranties have rules where you've got to keep taking your car back to them to keep the warranty going. So there's that aspect as well. So for the dealers, it's fantastic. It really helps them sell cars. But there's a whole bunch of admin that you need to do with that. You need to keep in communication with the people you sold the cars to. You need to make sure you're texting them, you're telling them, bring your car back, and you're keeping track of when their next services are due and things like that. You're validating that they actually are bringing their car in and getting it serviced. And then as the dealership, you're needing to track and report all that as well. So the dealerships love selling cars and they love anything that helps them sell cars, but they don't really love the admin side of it. So what these guys do is they sort of sit in the center and they provide this centralized admin service. So dealer sells the car, they sell the extended warranty with it, and then these guys come along and do the administration in return for a fee for each car. And in order to facilitate that, each dealer needs to give them information, usually on a fortnightly basis. So cars, as they're being sold, as people are bringing the cars in for service checks, the kilometer readings, all that sort of stuff, that information has to be pulled out of their what they call their dealer management systems and sent to these guys who need to collate it. And that's for one dealer. But then you expand that out to when you have 200 or 400 dealers that you're trying to support. And remembering that dealers come in all shapes and sizes. You're going to have the sophisticated ones, and then you're going to have the sort of the mom and pop type shops as well. And that introduces a whole lot of variability. So you're going to get different source systems that they're using. You're going to get inconsistencies in the data they provide you in terms of the structure. Some people are just going to do a really, really good job in giving you the data you need. Some people are going to do an awful job. But you need to work with that. And also there's going to be a lot of errors, etc. So, but nonetheless, in order to provide that service, they need to take all those files and they need to turn it into some form of usable data that they can then plug into their own CRM systems. And the way that they solve it is the way a lot of people solve it. Sitting in the middle is VBA macros and scripts and a whole bunch of manual effort to keep the thing ticking over. And the problem with that is it's really not a sustainable approach, because every time they bring on a new dealer, every time a dealer changes their files or their source system, you need to turn around and ask usually the VBA expert to make a change. So that the total cost of ownership of this solution goes up over time. So it really isn't sustainable. And it's also really easy just to forget a step along the way. So, forget that you need for a particular dealer to mash their data up in a particular way. So obviously we want to replace this with Solvexia, but we didn't necessarily want to replace it with a solution that works the same way, meaning we didn't want it so that every time a dealer changed, somebody needed to go in and have to change a step in Solvexia, because that in some ways recreates the same problem. So we knew that we needed a solution that had all the usual elements, that it was quick and accurate, etc. But it was really important that it could be managed by the most end user of end users, right? So people who are not normally going to go in and change the process themselves. So our solution, so you can swap out that VBA macro with Solvexia in the middle, was to introduce a series of rules tables that really had three things they needed to cover. So one is that they needed to align the columns or align the data from each dealer. So you have this Excel table that basically has each dealer listed down the page, and then the columns that they're expecting from the data sets from each dealer. And you can sort of see as you scan down the page, depending on the dealer, and it's all identified by the column header, you have a different layout from dealer to dealer. So, and the great thing about that is if a new dealer comes on board, somebody just grabs the Excel file, they drop a new line into that table, map the columns in whatever they want, re-upload it back into Solvexia, and you're done. Likewise, if something changes, you can go in, you can change that particular dealer's column alignment. The second rule is a set of transformations that need to be done to the data. So remembering that this is things like the name of the driver, their VIN number, their street address, etc. So the transformations will do things like, well, for one particular dealer, they have an alternate email address. So we want to, if their main email address is blank, we want to look at the secondary column and pull the email address across. For another dealer, they split the unit or the apartment number with the street address, and we want to bring those two fields together. So again, we have a table that the user can go in and they can enter these rules. So you can see with our rule, the second and the third rule, it's actually doing that street address scenario I was talking about. So it's saying, and we've tried to make it as end user friendly as possible. So what this ultimately needs to generate is a whole bunch of rules that get automated in Solvexia, but this again is an Excel table. So the user can go in and they can say, well, I want to change street 1 when street 1 begins with the word unit. So maybe that's the unit number. I want to bring street 1 and street 2 together. So again, they can have as many of these rules as they want. If they bring on a new dealer, they can just go and add a new rule. If they need to change a rule, they can go and do that. And then the third is, so you've aligned your data, you've done a bunch of transformations, you then also need to validate the data. And same thing, so a bunch of Excel-driven rules where they can say, well, mobile numbers need to start with 04, email addresses need to contain an @ symbol, VIN numbers need to be 17 characters long, etc. And then with each validation, you can also pick what you want to do. So do you want to just be logged in? Do you want the process to continue? Should the process stop and send an alert? Should the records just be excluded from the data set that you're doing? And again, Excel table, anyone can go in, change this, re-upload, and the process goes from there. So those are the three rules. They go in, those are really driving the entire solution. So the files come in on one side, the rules come in on the other. It's a little bit blurry, but the process itself is actually pretty simple beyond that point. Once it runs, in addition to producing that standard data set, it also produces a bunch of validations as well. So based on those rules I talked about earlier, so being able to say, well, these are all the records where the VIN number is not 17 characters. They can click on that, they can drill down into the data, they can see which data are erroneous. Other things that we were also looking to build in are things like automated alerting. So if a particular dealer has sent through some junk data, have the process automatically strip that out and send a notice back to the dealer saying you need to fix this data up as well. And again, the end goal here is to just make it really, really simple to manage this data collection and produce these results at the other end. I don't think we talked about it during the roadmap, but there's actually also a feature that we're working on at the moment, which is the ability to send out emails to people and collect data through an email as well. So if you sort of take it back to the beginning of this process, you can imagine where an email goes out to all of these dealers saying, hey, you need to give us your data for this fortnight. They drop it in, it goes straight into the process in Solvexia and gets processed from there. So I guess the key conclusions here is we've seen this problem in not just in this space, we've seen it in the insurance space around how policy data is assembled in different formats. We've seen it in other industries. We think that this is the right approach. So having these data-driven rules for controlling this, it's very adaptable. We actually took what we originally did in the life insurance space and put it into the motor vehicle space, and it worked quite well, and it's ready to go. And yeah, I would encourage anyone who again, a problem that I think exists in a lot of places, to let us know, and we'd be really keen to talk to you about that.